So let's start here. Harper's Gallery in Chelsea, and this is a solo exhibition by Marc Dennis, and it's a first one that Harper's Gallery is holding for him. Marc, I've known his work for many years. He's a mid-career artist who has created an exceptional body of work. He's probably best known as an artist who plays with old master paintings techniques, who paints oil on canvas as a traditional painter, depicting scenes and depicting moments and depicting people and themes that we traditionally associate with old masters, and yet he kind of tweaks it to make something slightly different, slightly edgier. So for example, this is a still life that's very large. You can see it sort of as you compare it with my scale. You have these luscious flowers bursting in every way, coming out into our space, painted exceptionally. You have to always sort of go up close to him and see how he depicts little droplets of water or reflections in a glass of a window somewhere in our space. How these flowers, on one hand, they're very realistically painted. On the other hand, they're also, of course, in the traditional sense of still life, like the way that we think of Dutch 17th century still lifes, and the fascination that they had with luxury, with opulence, but also with decay and mortality. And in many ways, that's kind of the catch that Marc seems so incredibly gifted to depict, to capture these moments when the flowers are kind of coming out into our space. They're blooming, they're in full bloom, and yet there is that almost like a transition into the finality, the ephemerality of flowers, that they're going to die, that that they're going to only exist for a very short time. And then if you sort of walk into seeing this exhibition, what he's doing is he's taking these very formal traditional themes, again, still life. He is painting them exceptionally realistically, one could say, and factually, and yet he's playing with the Pompadour technique. Is this a frame, an actual frame? And on one hand, if you're photographing something, you think, oh, this is a frame that the flower still life is going into, but then you realize that the frame is painted, entirely painted by him. And in fact, you sort of move your eyes around the painting and notice the joke, the tongue in cheekness, that provocation that he's including in them with his paintings. There's always a little twist that he manages to capture so well. We're completely enamored of the accuracy of the paintings, but then of course he kind of puts the joke, he's the joke on us. And then if you swing around here, this is where he goes out into the world, depicting the world in these various ways. He loves insects. These are large. The flowers are bigger than life. This is another aspect. On one hand, we sort of tend to think of old master still lifes as being very small, or much smaller and much more kind of true to life and true to size. These are bigger. They're almost as big as a person's head. And then the bubbles that are floating, the bubbles that are, again, they're kind of these ephemeral moments in time. You have some that can almost be described as abstract paintings. In other doubles, you have landscapes. In others, you have flowers. So they almost become these little moments, these singular moments within this larger composition. And then, of course, the bees working away, the busy bees, the constant labor that is produced by the bees, by this interaction, and the incredible technique, the techniques that we associate with old masters. And then again, he's always introducing a signature in these paintings. His signature depicts or is similar to some of their well-known Dutch 17th century artists. This is another one of my favorites. I love this one because the bubbles kind of multiply and become foamy, and within them they contain entire worlds. You have this still life of a the doubling and the tripling and the multiplying of the form constantly. So, and then notice that the form itself of the painting is a tondo. A tondo is a circular painting. So within a circle, there's more circles and more, and your eye keeps being engaged. You keep going into these little sort of windows, right? Little portals of sorts into the worlds that he's depicting in the paintings. This is a painting. This one here is Marc playing with his own autobiography. It's no longer just these incredibly lush flowers. Yes, the flower life, the flowers to life is there. You've got butterflies and bugs galore and bubbles that I've been describing, but you also have this creature, this little creature that is both made up, almost cartoon-like, and at the same time it's also something that he associates with his own biography. As he describes it, he was a juvenile delinquent when he was very young, and he did all kinds of things that verged on the illegal when he was a teenager and misbehaved. And in a way, it's sort of like he came into his own adulthood via this trial of difficult moments in his life. And maybe this is like this little creature that kind of doesn't belong, that seems to have popped up in this composition. And so for him, this is a personal and autobiographical depiction. And then you have, again, Marc exploring what he can do with something that's traditional, but at the same time also edgy and provocative and unlike what you expect anything to be. And again, you have little creatures here. They're almost Disney-like, and yet they're hyper-realist. They exist in this world that he has depicted in his painting. And in some forms, there is a little bit of that dragonfly, that dragonfly flower, the flower that eats bugs, that is kind of a carnivore flower. So within the world of imagination and fun and mischievous, there is danger that lies within that he's also depicting. This is kind of a fantastical painting, I would say. And I think the last one I want to cover is just if we go to the biggest one in the exhibition, and that's this glorious life of fruit, of flowers, of butterflies, of birds, and again, the gesture, the stroke that Marc making that's sort of celebrating nature. And I mean, one of the things that one can think about today is that Marc has also been painting this way for many years, and the contemporary moment has caught up with him. Younger generations of artists also painting both hyper-realistically and kind of embracing nature and its in all of its glory, but also all of its fragility, and something that perhaps we can think about potentially disappearing, right? So he's celebrating here, and he's including this entire compilation of flora and fauna, and yet danger lies within the beauty and the luscious depiction of all of the fruits and flowers and bugs is also laden with potential darkness and danger, maybe, and something that might disappear eventually.